you. Good morning. Okay, so I'm gonna tell Jeannie how we can sell more to her. All right, let's do it. So yes, Fernando did make a profound statement. And having been at RX for about a year and a half, so I'm new to the industry, that wasn't so profound for me. You see, coming from healthcare, that was the way we sold, right? We couldn't get in the door if you're selling a medical device or product without validating the outcomes that you were gonna get. So it didn't seem so profound, but wait, until I took the job and I started walking the show floors with all the reps. And I wanted to understand, how is it that we sell that this is such a revolutionary concept? Because to me, it wasn't. And I found something really profound. Value was driven based on upgrading for square footage. That was the conversation. And so one of the questions that I had was, okay, so a customer goes, increases their square footage, what additional value do they get from that? And it was crickets, right? That's what we always did. They're gonna spend more. And so this is really where I took the baton to take RX on this transformational journey for value-based selling, leaning on the foundation that Fernando had set initially, which the journey started in 2020, going into 2023. And I'm gonna share today where we are in the process. I'm gonna revisit the numbers that we shared 2 years ago, and talk about what's next. The industry is evolving. It's been an exciting year and a half, and we have so much more to do. So that's what we're gonna share. So I have here from value messaging to value delivery. It's not all lost, right? We are messaging the right way. And value is a word that gets used so many times. And I'm actually going to use it quite a bit as well. So we're going to have to get used to it. But I also think that's important because the more we say it, the more we can challenge ourselves to really deliver the value that we're talking about. And so our evolution is on how did we actually do that? How do we go from talking about it and actually actioning and executing it within the sales community? Sales is very interesting. I've been in sales my entire career, and I was excited that there were so many salespeople in the room. So what I'm saying today is not a novel concept, but this is just our story and our journey. So my goal for you is to take at least one thing from our evolution and figure out a way to implement it within your organization. Because like Gary said, if we all do it, we build scale, and this becomes a way of selling within the events business. So this was the initial foundation. The first one was don't rush, get the next meeting. Why are we rushing to rebook? What is the value when they're at the show? They haven't finished it. What are we delivering, particularly for anchor customers like Jeannie? Right? So ideally, those conversations, if Jeannie is planning a year ahead, should have started before actually the show. So we shouldn't continue rushing to rebook on site. That's particularly those key customers. And then look at multi-thread decision makers within the organization and influencers. Not that the contact point changes, but you get different insight. So if we get different insight, we can figure out what is it within our events that we can use to help deliver more outcomes with our customers. And so that leads to the next initial foundation, from pushing product features of what we're doing on the show floor, how exciting it is, like what's the so what? So what does it mean? So by really stopping and trying to understand what the customer is really working on, we're able to better address what their objectives are and really start to incrementally deliver more value to our customers. And the last piece here is just really on pricing, right? A lot has been said about pricing and package pricing, but to me, that's secondary. Once we're speaking to the objectives and the insights and some of the things that we can do for the customers, it is important, but that becomes secondary. So our primary conversation shouldn't be on the pricing or the early birds. It's really, how do we switch that around to say, like, what is the outcome you're looking for right? Are you looking for heat mapping data? What does that do to you? How does that help your marketing team? Those sort of questions are things that we're starting to figure out within our core customers, and it's still the foundation that we're continuing to focus on today. So just a little bit of a timeline here. So we started this really in 2020. And then by 2023, what we decided to do based on the initial results was scale it across the organization, across all the portfolios. So we started with an initial sample size of about 140 exhibitor customers. And those represented like key strategic accounts within some of our shows. So we took the initial foundation. I'll share the results in the next slide. And then based on that, 2024 was really about how do we now multiply that, right? How do we take that and spread it across even more shows and even more customers? So we're going to talk a little bit about customer segmentation and how that translated into what we're doing. But at the same time, also shifting the focus to bring in the cross-functional teams that help deliver those value as part of the conversation. So it's not just the one-pronged approach. And then as we're in 2025, what we're doing is looking at the overall return on value and really saying, you know, ROI, return on expectations, return on objective, whatever the word you're using, those are just table stakes, right? How do you look at it more comprehensively as a return on overall value? And that's really the lens that we're focused on as we move through. So these were the results. So we had shared this in 2023 where we saw from those initial sample size of 140 customers where we were having more conversations. We were having more touch points with our customers. We were having more customer contacts, right? Again, to gain insights. These were the efforts that we saw within our sales community. And then that reflected in the average product sold per customer. So not only is it just focused on space, but what are the other things that we can do to actually solve the problem they're looking for? So that was an indicator of that. And then to the outcome, which everyone loves, right? Our CFOs love it. You know, we saw an accelerated digital sales, average customer revenue increase as well as the margin. And then we also saw a slice of NPS increase from the initial foundation. So from that point on, through 2023, we saw these results sustain. And so that really led us into 2024 to say, how do we take this from a sample size of 140 to 290 and to what we're doing now, which is our top 20 initiatives, where we're asking each sales rep to look through their account base and come up with top 20 customers that will go through the process. So when I talk about return on value ecosystem, this is just a snapshot, and there's so much that goes into this, so I don't want to minimize it. But return on value, and when we look at it overall, it's not just a sales thing. I think so often when we talk about value-based selling, you know, all the salespeople in the room know, like, it's not just a thing you give to sales and is a concept they go and do. It's a shared objective across the organization. So you have sales, you have customer experience. They need to be part of that journey early on so that as we're understanding the customer's insight and articulating what the objective is, they're also understanding at the same time so we can shorten that time to delivery for them. AI and data, right? Everyone's talking about AI, but what does it truly mean, right? What are some of the data that we can capture and really share with the customers? And some of the things that we've done is with Exhibitor Dashboard, trying to embed it as part of our value conversations with the customers and seeing what are the gaps in terms of the data that we have and we can capture and what the customer is looking to deliver. And then the last piece of that is the validated outcome, which is shared not only just by the event teams, but every team that touches the organization. So events, operations, you know, the digital teams, right? We all have a shared KPI where we're looking at how are we all delivering on that overall customer value. Without that, that's one of the key learnings we've had. Without that, we cannot scale fully, right? It just becomes a thing that sales does. So just a little bit of our key learnings here. Structured discovery. So let's talk about that for a second. When we talk about structured discovery, when you're asking discovery questions, what we initially found was, again, this was a concept of sales. What questions do I ask? Do I ask questions differently? But what we found and what we learned is that we needed to have sales own the structure of those discovery. They know the customer best. Some of these relationships are very long tenured. So there needs to be some sort of pre-call element into what the discovery questions are going to be. What are we trying to find out? What has the customer said? And so we didn't want our sales teams just going out there and asking questions just to ask questions and say, okay, yes, great, I did discovery, and that's great. We wanted to, for this to work, we learned that we needed to build in a structured process for the discovery stage, because that's the only way we can really define and enhance the value that we're going to come up with each of these customers. The second piece there is on customer segmentation. And not every customer is a prime customer for value-based selling. We all know this. We don't want to waste time. So one of the key things that we started learning is who are the prime candidates for value-based selling? Who are the ones that are really focused on delivering something within the show that just transcends beyond just attending the show? There are those customers. These are not your transactional customers that are looking for a quick ROI. These are customers that have a longing for some sort of partnership. And so that was something we were able to identify within each show to be able to make this a more viable opportunity. And then, the last panel talked about just consistency and transparency. We can't deliver that if you don't have a structured process within the sales organization. So one of the things we did was just align what our process was going to be and what the structure was going to be. So every single person is selling the same way. We're delivering the same things the same way. And I know that sounds boring, but it's incredibly impactful if we're looking to drive consistency across the organization. And that was something we were able to deliver. And then the last 2 points here, when we think about, we have to play the long game, right? This isn't a one-size-fits-all type of structure, but is really looking at what is the overall customer lifetime value. And to be able to do that, right, and kind of leading into this, we really need to understand how do we become better partners for the customer. So whether it's what Jeannie was talking about looking at partnerships and looking at the overall total cost, those sort of things have to be in the equation and have to be in the model to be able to deliver better value. And then I'll just say this, ROI or table stakes is just expected, right? We have to prove the value for people coming to the event. It's not just something that is a value add. So for us now, we're focusing on just more business impact. How do we make a business impact to the customers based on the objective that they've told us they're trying to deliver? So the journey ahead, I don't want to disregard how critical new is for our business. Gary talked about it. So new is equally important for us in our business because that's the engine to keep going. Those are future value-based selling opportunities and future pipeline. So we're continuing to focus on that. Technology is also a driver for sales enablement. So we've implemented a tool within the sales organization so that they can use AI to have conversations with their customers and be able to self-adjust and coach towards value-based selling. And as I mentioned earlier, return on value is an alignment across cross-functional group. It's not just a sales function alone. And then when we think about sales readiness, preparing earlier in the cycle, how ready are we to sell? This is something that Fernando had referenced in his first speech, that we have metrics for sales readiness. But now what we're doing is going beyond that to say, how do we do it even better, right? How do we get the sales plans ready even earlier in the cycle? How do we do it better? So this becomes a continuous improvement loop that we've created. And the last piece here for anyone in sales who's gone through change management, it isn't easy to do. So one of the things that we're doing is really setting the expectation on what this newer rule of engagement is. and being very clear with our sales teams what the expectation is and what's in it for them as well, and just bringing them along on the journey. So where are we now in terms of the results? Is this paying off? So we expanded to over 1,000 customers that are part of the value-based selling. We are seeing tremendous results from it, with, again, still the average customer contacts increasing by 32%. We're contacting our customers even a bit more and being more strategic about it. We have a way to now measure that. And we're also seeing diverse mix of products being sold. And then at the same time, the increased revenue and the digital acceleration that we're seeing, that's a testament that we're going to continue to use to scale. So I am out of time, but. You've got 2 more minutes. Go ahead. Okay, so I'll go really quickly on these last 2. So key considerations. Again, this is something that we've learned, and considerations as we build and continue to scale. We have to tailor the conversation, right? We have to look at what value is and understand it and tailor the conversation based on what we're hearing. And technology is a great tool, and AI is a great tool to do that. We've actually just rolled out an implementation team. So I talked about the role of customer success earlier in the journey. We can't think of customer success as a post-sale arm that we just kind of, okay, we've sold, now go. They need to walk side by side with us for this to work. And then we've talked about using AI. That's only going to continue to expand and make us a little bit more efficient. And the last key point I want to drive here is, having sold other things but space, we have to think beyond the booth space. I know it's important, it's a key revenue metric that we measure, but there could be other things that we look at in terms of what the customer is trying to achieve and how we help them deliver on their customer objectives. So I'm going to close with this, just in the interest of time. Value is no longer a promise, it's a deliverable. So we do have a call to action here on where we have to think about not just saying we're delivering value, but really going through and executing on what we're saying. And then moving from just the messaging to measuring outcomes. How do we measure those outcomes? How do we continue to prove those outcomes to our customers? And then the last point here is really, when you think about overall return on value, this is really how we build loyalty with our customers, right? Our customers are in it for the long haul. We just have to kind of create that bridge to create a better partnership with them. So that's all the time I have, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.